Well, as I mentioned in my editorial at the start, the New York Times has issued an apology of sorts after publishing this front page photo of a toddler in Gaza claiming he was suffering severe malnutrition. A New York Times spokesperson has said, "We've since learned new information." It's amazing how they learn information after publishing, including from the hospital that treated him and his medical records, and have updated our story to add context about his pre-existing health problems. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Sky News host Rowan Dean. Rowan, good evening. It's not just the New York Times that lie about what's happening in Gaza. Leaked emails reported in the Spectator magazine show the BBC instructed its reporters to blame Israel for the food shortage in Gaza and to ignore any evidence to the contrary. Can you believe this?
Of course I can believe it. This is truly sickening stuff, James, and well done on your editorial at the beginning of the show. Absolutely spot on. We're now at a point where the propaganda coming out of Hamas is so sophisticated, so sickening, so disgusting, that any sane person's automatic response should be, I'm skeptical about this. Anything you see coming out purporting to be the evils of Israel, terrible things that Israeli Defense Force soldiers are doing and so on, dreadful things happening to the people of Gaza, one should immediately be skeptical. That should be the first point of kind of engagement with this sort of information, because the propaganda is so sick, it's so sinister, it's so devious. Imagine using a severely crippled, I'm not sure quite what the best word is, but a child who has very, very serious deformities that have got nothing to do with the Israeli Defense Force or Israel or anything, pre-existing conditions. Imagine using that, going into a situation where you have a deformed child or a child with a dreadful illness, and using that for your political propaganda, using that child. It is so sick and it is so disgusting. And worse than that, there are newspapers here, Fairfax newspapers quite happily printed that. We had the Prime Minister of this country, who, by the way, gets more despicable by the day, in my opinion, coming out and accusing the Israelis of deliberately starving or of suggesting that the Israelis were inhumane, I think was the word he was using. Lack of humanity. No army in the history of this planet has done more to ensure the safety of the civilians who declared war on them. Let's not forget this. If Hamas and the Gazans wanted this thing over and done with, they could finish it tonight by simply releasing the hostages. The simple fact is that the Israelis are in the most pernicious position of trying to rescue their own hostages, their own people, but at the same time, Hamas are using its own people in the most vile and disgraceful ways to demonize the Israelis. So I just say shame on every single person whose first response is to go, oh, yeah, well, the Israelis, they've gone too far. They've got to stop. They've got to ease off. It's getting out of control. I'm sorry, if you're that person, you are guilty of a blood libel. Do you seriously think the Israeli people, the Jewish people, the government of Israel are sitting there deliberately starving and torturing the people of Gaza? No, they are not. They are going out of their way to do the very opposite. So shame on every individual who doesn't immediately recognize this disgusting propaganda for what it is, James.
Yeah, the other thing I'd like to know, Rowan, is whether Keir Starmer or Anthony Albanese, both of whom referenced that photo the New York Times has now said, maybe we fudged it a little bit. If either of those world leaders will say, hey, by the way, we need to correct the record, that photo we referred to as evidence was other than what it was purported to be, I don't think we'll hear from either of them regarding that. I want to move on to Australian energy policy.
James, every journalist should be asking Anthony Albanese to apologise to the people of Israel for what he has said about them. Sorry, carry on.
And what are the odds of that happening, Rowan?
Exactly.
Not great. I want to talk about energy policy, something else I know you're really fired up about. Australian farmers are now going to be required to confirm whether their animals have been grazing near solar panels and wind turbines in order to receive a valued stamp of approval from accreditation body Integrity Systems. The group says, and I'll quote for you, chemical or physical contamination risks can be caused if livestock have access to degrading equipment and infrastructure, including solar panels and wind turbines. Rowan, that doesn't sound good.
Certainly doesn't sound good for the cows. Maybe they want to kill the cows because they're farting and causing climate change. I mean, this whole thing is so absurd. I was pleased to hear your two former guests, both of them of the left, from the Labor Party at least, not so much of the left of the Labor, but definitely of the left on Australian politics, quite correctly calling out the net zero nonsense for what it is. It is an absolute disgrace. Now we learn that our cattle are being poisoned by solar panels and wind turbines. So the poor old farmers of Australia, this country was built on the hard toil, the sweat and toil of the farmers of this nation. This Labor government and the Teals and the Greens are treating the farmers of Australia with absolute contempt. Not only are they marching across their land, their own private property, fining them if they don't let these thugs and goons come onto their property with their transmission lines and their windmills and their solar panels. They are then now poisoning their cattle and their land with this disgusting stuff. The entire climate change thing is a scam. Donald Trump called it out. He sat there with the president of the EU. He sat there with the Prime Minister of Britain, and he told it as it is. These things are being banned in America. Windmills, they kill birds, they destroy the land that they're built on. You can't get rid of the things. They are so toxic. You can't bury them. You can't dump them out in the sea. What do you do with the things? They rust. They have an 8 to 10 year lifespan. Everything about this climate cult is destructive. It is the most sinister destruction of our environment, of our economy, of our prosperity, and it is. And the great tragedy is that it is the farmers and the poorest people in Australia, the working classes, who can't afford, the small businesses who can't afford the power bills that this entire scam is perpetrating, while the political leaders sit with their huge salaries, sit in their Canberra bubble. They've got their cushy retirement salaries. They'll be floating off around the rest of the world as soon as they leave Parliament. The devastation and destruction of the climate cult has to stop, and we need a political leader on the right side of politics, on the conservative side of politics. We need a political leader to lead the coalition in fighting this insanity and this madness before it completely destroys our farmlands, our prosperity, and the future of our kids.
I could not agree more. Rowan Dean, thanks for your time tonight. Appreciate it.